There are moments that change everything. Moments when noise disappears, when time itself seems to stop moving. For Britain, there have been wars, celebrations, coronations, tragedies, yet only a few days when the nation truly stood still. When streets emptied, radios hushed, and the only sound left was the faint heartbeat of silence itself. This is the story of the day Britain went silent, and why, decades later, that silence still echoes in our hearts. 1. The calm before it began like any other morning. The kettle whistled, milk bottles clinked at the doorstep, the faint crackle of a wireless somewhere down the street. But there was something different in the air, a kind of still anticipation. People went about their routines, but they moved slower. Even the sky seemed to know something was coming. The papers were full of headlines, the radios spoke in hushed tones, and people nodded to each other without words, as if speech would somehow break the moment before it began. Some said they could already feel the silence forming, long before it arrived. 2. A nation that listens. At the appointed time, everything stopped. Engines quieted, footsteps froze mid-stride, and the usual chatter dissolved into nothing. It wasn't the silence of emptiness. It was a silence full of presence, a silence you could almost hear. From London to Leeds, from Cardiff to the smallest Scottish village, the entire country seemed to inhale at once, and then hold that breath together. It was 2 minutes that felt like eternity. And when it ended, when the bells began to ring again, people didn't cheer or clap. They just nodded quietly. Because in those 2 minutes, they had remembered something words could never capture. 3. The first time. Armistice, 1919. That shared stillness began more than a century ago. The year was 1919. The Great War was over, but grief still filled the air. King George V had asked for a national pause, a 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month. It was the exact moment the guns had fallen quiet 1 year earlier. Factories halted. Trains stopped mid-track. Even ships at sea stood motionless. For those 2 minutes, the country that had sacrificed so much simply listened. They listened to memory. They listened to loss. And in that silence, the noise of 4 years of war finally faded away. People said the hush that day was so deep you could hear the wind over London, and in that wind they felt peace for the first time. 4. Silence. That spoke louder than words. Every year since, the same stillness returns. Each November, people gather in streets, in schools, in churches. Some bow their heads, some close their eyes, but all remember. It's remarkable, really. In a world that never stops talking, Britain still finds 2 minutes to be utterly silent. No orders, no commands, just an unspoken understanding that this pause matters. Those who lived through the wars say the air changes when it happens, as if the weight of generations presses gently on the present. Young and old, together, connected by something invisible yet undeniable. Silence, after all, is a language of its own, and we, the British, have always understood how to speak it. 5. The day the nation wept, 1997. Decades later, that same silence returned, not for battlefields, but for a woman who had touched hearts around the world. It was the 31st of August 1997, the day Princess Diana died. That Sunday morning, the whole country seemed muted. Television presenters whispered. Newspapers trembled in hands that couldn't believe what they were reading. Even London's endless hum felt subdued. In the days that followed, something extraordinary happened. Britain rediscovered collective emotion. People who had never met her left flowers by the thousands. Strangers hugged in the streets. And through all the morning, there was that same quiet, the same shared stillness that had once filled the nation in 1919. On the morning of Diana's funeral, as her coffin made its way through London, you could hear the creak of carriage wheels on the road. The sound of footsteps echoed through Westminster, and nothing else. It was a modern silence, one born of shock and sorrow, but it carried the same respect as that first armistice. For those who remember it, that silence still lingers. It wasn't imposed, it simply happened. Because sometimes grief unites a country more than any celebration ever could. 6. The Queen's final silence. 2022. 25 years later, Britain fell silent again. It was September 2022, the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. For 70 years, she had been the steady rhythm beneath the nation's heartbeat, the one constant through decades of change. And when she was gone, the country didn't roar. It sighed. The news broke quietly, as if even the broadcasters didn't want to disturb the moment. People stood outside Buckingham Palace in the rain, just standing. No chants, no speeches, only flowers being laid and the soft murmur of disbelief. That evening, as the Union Jack was lowered and the crowds fell still, Britain once again remembered how to grieve together, in silence. It was a silence of gratitude this time, not just loss. A silence that said, "Thank you." 7. What silence means. Every generation has its own day when Britain went silent. For some, it's the Armistice. For others, it's Diana. For many, it's the Queen. But in every case, the meaning is the same. It's unity. We're not always good at showing emotion. We don't wail in the streets or shout our feelings to the sky. Our strength has always been quieter. It's in the shared nod, the lowered head, the single tear wiped away before anyone notices. Silence, to us, is not emptiness, it's dignity. It's how we say everything that words cannot. 8. The echoes of silence. Ask anyone old enough to have lived through those moments and they'll tell you. They remember not what they heard, but what they felt. They'll say the air grew heavier or that the world seemed to slow down. They'll say they could hear their own heartbeat and somehow it didn't feel lonely. Because in those moments, we weren't individuals, we were one people. Different towns, different lives, but the same shared pause. And when the sound returned, the bells, the engines, the voices, it was softer, almost respectful, as if the world knew it had just witnessed something sacred. 9. The vanishing art of stillness. Today, true silence is hard to find. Phones buzz, televisions shout, traffic never ends. We live in a world that fears quiet, because quiet leaves room for thought. But perhaps that's why our moments of silence are more important than ever. They remind us that underneath all the noise, we're still capable of stopping, of listening, of remembering. And maybe that's what makes Britain, even in a modern age, feel timeless. We've kept the ability to pause, to hold respect in the air like breath. 10. More than history. The day Britain went silent isn't just a headline from the past, it's a living ritual. Every time the nation stops, we reconnect, not only with those we lost, but with who we are. The silence after the First World War taught us grief. The silence after Diana taught us compassion. The silence after the Queen taught us gratitude and continuity. Different moments, same heart, same stillness that binds us across generations. When you think about it, that silence is our most enduring national sound. 11. The meaning of 2 minutes. 2 minutes might seem short, the length of a song intro or an advert break. But for those who truly stand in that moment, it feels infinite. Children in classrooms fidget for the first few seconds, then look around and realize everyone is still. Even birds outside seem quieter. You can feel history breathing down your neck. Those 2 minutes stretch across a century, from muddy trenches to modern streets, reminding us that peace was earned, not given. And when the bugle plays the last post, the silence that follows is not absence, it's presence. It's the weight of memory made audible. So the next time you find yourself standing in that stillness, maybe in front of a cenotaph, maybe in your living room with the television on mute, remember what it means. It means you are part of something vast and beautiful. A chain of remembrance stretching back more than 100 years. Our grandparents knew it, our parents carried it, and now it's ours to keep alive. Because long after the sound returns, after the engines start and conversations begin again, that feeling remains. That shared quiet dignity, That reminder that we, as a nation, can pause, feel, and remember together. And one day, long after we're gone, another generation will stand still. They'll bow their heads, close their eyes, and listen to the same ancient silence that once filled our streets. Because the day Britain went silent was never truly over. It just echoes, softly, eternally, in every heart that still remembers.